We live in a drug-oriented society with a pill for every ill. So what's wrong with taking pills if they make you feel good? The question that must be addressed to parents is who originated the in-group drug language and who, year in and year out, puts it to music? Did 20 million young people receive some kind of vision about drugs? Or are they merely reflecting what the mass media and some high school and college professors and publicized entertainers have taught them? It becomes easy to understand the willingness of so many young people to experiment with drugs. Some try it once or twice and never again. But for the majority, the psychological trauma is overwhelming and becomes, indeed, the first day in the rest of the youngster's life. The drug user automatically looks on society as his enemy, since he is on the other side of the law. Probably there is no greater force tending to solidify a group into a class than the use of narcotics. Waiting to capitalize on the unfortunates who turn to drugs is an active, organized group whose object is to create class hatred. For years, class hatred has been fomented between black and white, labor and management, rich and poor. Now it's one generation against another. Here's an example of how various forces are manipulating the newly formed class of young drug users. This poster appeared in Berkeley, California. It shows how marijuana and revolution joined together as one force, combining the Black Panther movement headed by Eldridge Cleaver and the notorious Yippie movement. The pipe in the corner is the symbol for marijuana crossed with the gun, symbol for revolution. To understand the people who promote this hatred, let's look at some of their publications. The May 23, 1968 edition of the San Francisco Express-Times shows the late Senator Kennedy in a casket with a caption, "Why waste your vote?" The article pointed out he would be done away with anyhow. Note, this appeared 2 weeks before Senator Kennedy's assassination. In every issue of the Express-Times is the column Altimeter. And these young revolutionaries and drug users are provided with the latest price list on drugs available in the San Francisco area and instructions for making bombs to be used in the coming revolution. Ready to cash in on the turmoil created and to promote it further are newspapers called the Underground Press Syndicate, which claim to reach 5 million young people every week. To these 5 million naive readers, they feed a steady stream of narcotic information, sexual perversion, and anti-establishment propaganda. They preach that youngsters should never trust anyone over 30. Max Shear, editor of the money-making Berkeley Barb, is over 50, but the kids haven't figured that out yet. One of the leading merchandisers of revolution and of narcotics, free love, and class hatred is over 30 Paul Krasner, an originator of the Yippie movement and publisher of The Realist in New York. His August 1968 issue devotes itself to the digger papers of the San Francisco hippie movement. Another Realist write-up is a dramatic description of a hippie girl giving birth to her baby in a hippie communal kitchen, with the afterbirth passed around in a basin and consumed mau-mau fashion by her friends. They call this satire. Krasner demonstrates his anti-religious stand, again satirically, by having a prostitute dress up in a nun's habit. On one occasion, she opened his fly and fondled him in public to blow the minds of the straights. In the great flood of sacrilegious humor to which we are subjected, posters like this are considered funny, but only by those who are supposed to be dropping out of a sick society. Publications like Paul Krasner's also have impact on college newspapers and healthy-minded students. An example is the student-financed San Francisco State College paper, Open Process. It features such articles as Masturbators of the World Arise. This article, Free Love, advises you to have sexual relations with all your friends, male and female. The tone set by these papers is reflected even in so-called underground high school papers. Here are two, The Voice in Seattle and Insight from Los Angeles. Such papers are published by students in every major city, written for fellow high school readers, and filled with revolutionary, anti-religious, and narcotic stories, editorials, poems, and cartoons. The damage from these filthy sheets to the morals and well-being of the country would not be so widespread if it were not for the mass media taking up their cry. We wonder if the people that look actually read these publications they write about so favorably. Publications that find humor in drinking the afterbirth of a baby, making Molotov cocktails, promoting homosexuality, preparing for revolution. Is this truly the voice of the future? Visit your library and look up any of the revolutionary movements given million-dollar publicity buildup in recent issues of magazines and newspapers. Jerry Rubin, for example, one of the militants appearing before the House Committee on Un-American Activities in Washington, taking part in Chicago Convention riots, or even in free speech or filthy speech demonstrations in Berkeley. His words ring a familiar note very close to those of other promoters of class hatred. In a pitch to young people, he says, capitalistic, money-making, bureaucratic, imperialistic-minded, boring, exploited, military world structures are crumbling. What is needed is a generation of people who are freaky, irrational, sexy, angry, irreligious, childish, and mad. People who say, to hell with your goals. People who lure you with music, pot, and LSD. You cannot disregard these revolutionaries. On June 23, 1967, on President Johnson's visit to Los Angeles, it took 3 armored helicopters and 1,300 armed police to keep 10,000 demonstrators from storming the Century Plaza Hotel. Note here, you didn't see it in the papers, leading the demonstrators was the communist, Peking-oriented Progressive Labor Party, headed by Jim Dan and Steve Cherkos. They're proudly flying the Viet Cong enemy flag. It's curious how publications such as Look magazine can give the Students for Democratic Society lofty recognition when the SDS publication, New Left Notes, has these novel educational methods for our entire society. Flushing bombs in toilets to destroy plumbing, using sharp tripod-shaped metal instruments to halt vehicles, firing Molotov cocktails from shotguns, jamming radio equipment, dropping thermite bombs down manholes to destroy communication systems. The publicity given SDS and other revolutionary groups by national publications has glamorized such organizations and aided in making youngsters the willing tools for purveyors of group hatred. Revolutionaries always have a symbol to identify the individual as a member of the movement. Today it is the peace symbol. It's seen everywhere around us. It identifies a struggle by groups who today envision another utopia. Youngsters are told, and many believe, that it is the vested interest in the status quo of their parents and society that stands in the way of utopia where all will live in peace. Certainly a beautiful thought. This has been the thought of people like Bertrand Russell, who introduced the peace symbol in England. He is credited with the phrase, better read than dead. This phrase typifies the philosophy of the Fabian Socialist Society, of which Russell was an early member. The Fabian Socialists foresee a one-world government which will be attained through gradualism, and to date they have been successful in dismembering the British Empire and nearly bankrupting what's left. The Fabian Socialists have been making headway also in the United States. Take, for example, the sandwich quarters and dimes you now carry. You can trace the cause of these back to the teachings of Lord John Maynard Keynes, a Fabian Socialist and father of our present U.S. economic system of deficit spending. Coincidental with the anti-religious movement in our country today, it is interesting to note that the so-called peace movement adopted the well-known symbol called the witches or crow's foot, familiar to Europeans as the Antichrist symbol. Another symbol worn by young people in America today is called the Ankh, an Egyptian symbol supposed to stand for life, signified by the male reproductive organ. Here the Ankh is used as the symbol of the Elysium Institute on its official publication. The Elysium Institute is dedicated to creating a sexual revolution. You can see by the cover list of articles the interest which the magazine promotes. Free love, according to Webster. The splendor of plural marriage. Bisexuality, the way of the future. Elysium Institute, publishers of Ankh and other nudist magazines, also provides its readers with a referral directory of organizations having similar goals. Prominent on this list is SECUS, Sex Education and Information Council of the U.S. SECUS is working with the National Education Association to introduce sex education to all children, from kindergarten through high school. The lessons for the very tiny ones are already part of the curricula in many schools. First, children are taught how dogs, cats, and horses have seeds planted in them. Then they learn that human beings are like other animals. And next they learn how Mommy and Daddy do it, by lying down facing each other as shown. This type of education in the schools for 5-year-olds has brought protest from aroused parents. And incredibly, those parents concerned with the Sekus approach to teaching their children are portrayed as reactionaries who think sex education is some kind of communist plot. Parents frantically search for an answer and grasp at any plausible solution. However, they should beware when the same influences that created the problem start supplying the answer. The answer being promoted this time is called sensitivity training. Sensitivity training, sometimes called behavioral science, is not new. It was used in Germany to control the minds of the fanatic Nazi youth. It was used in Russia under the name of psychopolitics and was a successful force in subduing the masses into submitting to rule by a few. The Chinese used it on our soldiers in the Korean War, only then it was called brainwashing. It was so successful that for the first time in American history, many of our soldiers didn't even try to escape from their captors. Now the same technique is being introduced in high schools and colleges across the nation as the antidote for the increase in drug abuse. To see how this kind of training can influence and control our young people, let's look at an article from Time magazine that gave national stature to the revolutionaries in the graduating class of 1968, terming them as possibly the most creative ferment ever to disturb college campuses. One student example given is Brian McGuire, who after attending a sensitivity training course at California's Esalen Institute announced to his Phi Beta Kappa Honor Society that his academic achievement hadn't been worth it. If this is the effect on a disciplined, highly educated mind, imagine the impact on teenagers already confused enough to turn to drugs. Parents must understand that organizations like the Esalen Institute, Sekus for Sex Education, Timothy Leary's Castilian Foundation, and many others receive their major financing from tax-free foundations. A fact you might contemplate when you look at your next pay voucher. You should realize that the music your children listen to is not all harmless. Some is designed to demoralize American youth, even though they cannot be made to believe it. It's all spelled out for you in the White Panther Manifesto. With our music and our economic changes, we plunder the unsuspecting straight world for money and the means to carry out our program. You don't need to get rid of all the honkies. You just rob them of their replacements and let them atrophy and die out, with its heirs cheering triumphantly all around. We don't have guns yet, not all of us, because we have more powerful direct weapons. Direct access to millions of teenagers is one of our most potent weapons, and their belief in us is another. But we will use guns if we have to. If you find all of this disgusting, congratulate yourself. You're in the majority. But what can you do to solve the problem? People everywhere are concerned and frustrated, and many see the need for concentrated, concerted action. Add your strength to the growing movement to restore decency and reinforce basic moral standards. Join a local group, or if none exist, help form one. The stakes in this battle are extremely high. Simply stated, the stakes are the minds, emotions, bodies, and even the souls of your children. These children are your responsibility, and the attacks on them are unrelenting. Here is just one example of why we must all involve ourselves. This is an art exhibit at California State College, Long Beach. Over 27,000 students and 1,000 professors. The exhibit was defended by the official student paper and many of the faculty members as being in good taste. They said people who see anything wrong with this have to be sick in their own minds. The incredible fact is that some of the horribly sick minds behind the promotion of pornography, obscenity, and drugs are the very same ones now designing the sex education courses for our children in the schools. Pornography, obscenity, and drugs, now sex education for our children. No matter how you look at the situation, it is obvious that the things we are seeing are not all happening by accident. In the final analysis, the choice is up to you. If you are a young person, you must resist these attacks in order to preserve your own mental and physical well-being and maintain your personal integrity. If you are a parent, you must provide the direction and supervision for your own family. Join the movement to restore decency now, before the needle is in your child's arm.